Yeah, it's a great question. So what does this mean for, for effective brainstorming? How can we apply this? It's really important for people to identify a question, firstly it comes into the way you frame the question that you're trying to work on. So the brain likes simple questions that can be held in mind, and this comes down to small prefrontal capacity. So a simple question that's really, really easy to recall, how do we grow sales, is easy to recall versus what's happening in Latin America and how do we link that market to this market, something that you can't recall. So the first thing is that we need to simplify questions to the point that people can easily recall them and that they stick. The second thing is it's very, very significant how you actually frame the question. Is the question framed in a toward way or in a way context? So your brain makes a decision about every sentence, as well as every person and every ballroom and every book and everything. Your brain makes a decision about toward or away about 5 times a second. So every 0.2 of a second, your brain says, I'm going to go into a toward state or an away state. Okay? And if you say, let's say we're talking about how do we grow sales, if you pose the question as, what's the problem with sales, you're creating an away state. Okay? If you pose the question as, what breakthroughs can we find around sales, you're creating a toward state. Okay, so the question being simple is really important, and the question being in an appreciative or positive approach turns out to be very, very significant. What happens is in that positive state, you literally notice more data, and you have a significant increase in the number of insights you're going to have versus the away state. It turns out to have a biological impact on the data that you process and how you process the data as well. So so that's even before you do any reflection. It's got to be simple and it's got to be positive. The next thing is basically pose the question and then tell everyone to kind of bugger off and do something fun. You're going to get more. That's if you want creative solutions. If you're just looking for iterations and variations, that's okay. But if you want something really different, it's going to happen if people are actually quiet and happy and internally focused and doing something like taking a nice walk in the park, not worried about a deadline, all of that stuff. So send people out, just let people sleep on it. We do have insights because the brain's quieter overnight. We do have lots of insights because people have actually slept. Sleep consolidates memory in a way that really helps with insights. So literally, don't put any effort. Sleep on it. Let's see what comes up. Or go for a walk if it's urgent and see what comes up. That's going to be much more efficient. And do something fun. Google has a lot of things right. The way they allow people to kind of have fun and do stuff, helps. Going off and playing table tennis for 20 minutes and forgetting all about work actually can do all sorts of interesting things for the brain, provided you're not too competitive, perhaps. But just kind of having fun really, really helps. So those are a couple of specific takeaways. And the reason it doesn't, brainstorming doesn't work so well is because people get very competitive and they get, the threat response, and they get a lot of noise in the brain. Any other questions before we go on? We're talking about the rational is overrated. Let's go to number 2 of these surprises. We've got emotions backward, and it's very, very interesting, this emotion research. In some ways, this is a bit like the world is flat, and we've really misunderstood the way emotions work. Firstly, and I'm sure most people in this room would understand, we are not rational creatures, we're deeply emotional creatures. And we can't make decisions without emotions. That it's impossible almost. We get stuck. We're unable to choose a cereal packet in the morning if we don't have emotions. So emotions are important. But there's this continuum. You can't see it very well. It's a bit small for people over there. Sorry, but the toward and away. The way emotions work, the away response or the threat response is much, much, much stronger than the toward response. And it's very seductive. It kind of does something to us, and we tend to go there, and a lot of times that we shouldn't. And that's one of the ways that we've got them backward. If you walked into the room today and saw someone that you liked, this is reward and this is threat, and this is seconds. If you saw someone that you liked, the reward circuitry would have sort of gone like that and then started to taper off. If you walked in here and saw someone to an equal degree you didn't like, to someone, to an equal degree, your brain would go like that. That's how intense it is. It goes through 3 pages. Look at that. It's really strong. It's a quantum phenomenon, that one. So it's very, very intense when you see someone you don't like, even if it's the same sort of level. Okay, show someone a happy face in the scanner that shows someone just an angry face in the scanner. That, same situation, just different emotion. And so the brain is hypervigilant to threat. What happens is the negative, it comes on stronger, is longer lasting, is a stronger response overall. You also have more real estate literally devoted to threat. And it's also very seductive. It kind of makes you feel alive. If you leave your phone on all the time and you're busy answering stuff, that's great for the afternoons to keep you awake. You will feel sort of alive, a kind of buzz. It's good for staying awake, after lunch, but your capacity to do deeper thinking is gone. Your capacity to actually process and write or really produce stuff is really significantly decreased. But it's very seductive. It gives you this feeling of being focused, but it's weapons focus. You're focused just in a thin stream of data. You're not focused more broadly. So we've got emotions wrong in a number of ways. We tend to go into the negative, and particularly how we regulate emotions. Now, I don't want to take the wind of the nice gentleman down there who's going to talk about self-regulation coming up, so I don't want to talk too much about it. But I just will say that the self-regulation strategy that works the best, the one self-regulation strategy that really is the only strategy that works in strong threat responses, the only one that works in strong threat responses. People basically, particularly logical people, don't like to use it and think it's not going to help. And the strategy that makes emotions worse is the one that we tend to actually use. So just at high level, the research on this is people, if you interview people about how they manage their emotions, the strategy du jour is suppression. I'm just going to try not to feel it. I would assume that people in this room would not have that as your strategy du jour, by the way. You would not be able to work in the change field if you had suppression as your major strategy. Okay, you've got other strategies, I'd say. But suppression is the strategy du jour. That's kind of what we think of doing. And what we see from James Gross's work and Kevin Oxner's work at Columbia is suppression actually has your brain have the same or more arousal. So your limbic system gets even worse. You get bad memory, and in fact, it makes other people uncomfortable. So suppression is a terrible strategy. That's the one we think works. Cognitive change strategies, we think they're a bit weird, a bit soft, not dealing with reality. But the cognitive change strategies reduce arousal, no impact on memory, and no impact on others. But the cognitive change strategy that works really, really well is called reappraisal. You'll know it as reframing or recontextualizing. It's, getting to a meeting and someone's late, you're getting upset, and you say, oh, maybe they are running late, maybe I should help them. Maybe it's not about me. So you change your interpretation, and what happens is your whole biological response changes. Your organization's going through a big change, and you decide consciously to see it as an opportunity to do bigger changes, to get things done. What a great chance to finally kind of really make some deep change. And suddenly you see it as an opportunity. So this capacity to alter your point of view, which some people see as looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, some people see as not living in reality. It's a very, very important capacity because reappraisal turns out to be the only cognitive change or self-regulation strategy that works for strong threats, and is absolutely critical for managing strong threats. For leaders, their world is strong threats. It's a really, really important capacity. Now, here's just to tell you how poignant this is a study of about 500 people. James Gross, who's the founding father of emotional regulation work, he categorized people into two groups, those who suppress more and those who reappraise more. And this is what he found. People who suppressed more were below average in these domains, in reappraisal, above average, and about a dozen different domains, including depression and other issues. There's a massive difference when controlling for everything else. There's a massive difference just on the variable of do you suppress or do you reappraise? Do you suppress or do you reappraise? Unfortunately, reappraising involves looking at a situation, seeing multiple point of view, and deciding on the one which is most helpful. And people who are really data-driven, who like kind of dealing with reality and gritting and bearing it, don't really like the idea of reappraisal very much, especially if they've kind of had a limited perspective on the world in some way. So we've got, overall we've got emotions backward, and we need to actually see that we can alter our interpretations, and that doing so actually is, or not doing so is kind of irresponsible. Not altering and noticing our responses and working them, it's kind of irresponsible because you get into a threat state, then you can't process the world.